Hello and welcome to Xtalks Spotlight, illuminating insights from subject matter experts and industry thought leaders. I'm Sonia Hunt. In this episode, we are asking the question, why and how will e-commerce transform the interactive response technology, IRT, user experience? With more, here's Sydney Perlmutter.
Thanks, Sonia. E-commerce has fueled the adoption of new technologies and modern architecture to integrate processes, empower informed decision-making, create seamless end-to-end transactions, and protect the safety of data. The rise of e-commerce has increased expectations of consumer-like experiences in the life science industry. Modern software development concepts that enabled e-commerce applications are helping to increase the flexibility and scalability of eClinical applications to meet the precise needs of each clinical trial, integrate data from multiple sources, and seamlessly access and share data across applications. In this Xtalks Spotlight edition, our featured guest speaker will explore some of the elements of this modern architecture and how it is transforming the IRT platform and user experience. We're delighted to have Ryan Ridge, Vice President of IRT Operations at YPrime. Ryan has more than a decade of experience in IRT delivery and innovation. Ryan has been a featured subject matter expert at industry events and conferences, providing valuable insights and best practices to attendees. With a passion for helping clients achieve successful outcomes, Ryan's expertise and domain knowledge have helped drive growth and success in various organizations. Thank you for taking the time in the Spotlight interview, Ryan.
Thanks, Sydney.
So Ryan, could you explain some of the parallels between the e-commerce industry and the eClinical industry and why one is having such an impact on the other?
It's a great question. And there's a lot of different similarities between e-commerce and eClinical. In my opinion, e-commerce is a little bit ahead of eClinical, and that's for a couple different reasons, primarily being that eClinical is a much more regulated industry. That means e-commerce is free to take a lot more risks and deal with situations where maybe it doesn't work out a little more easily. There's many lessons to take from e-commerce from an eClinical perspective, but among the similarities, we both have a stringent need for data security, dealing with GDPR regulations. Providing a seamless and easy user experience can be very differentiating for both. Having all of our technology transactions happening in one place in an end-to-end fashion, and an overwhelming need more and more for simple, even self-service integrations. I think back even especially to recent events in 2020 with the pandemic, where both industries were suddenly challenged with a sudden spike for a version of direct-to-consumer shipping. For eClinical, that became direct-to-patient. Those that were able to adapt were able to thrive, and those that weren't, primarily due to a technology infrastructure, have still been busy trying to catch up. So there's a lot of very similar challenges faced by the industries, but in e-commerce, there's a lot less constraints on what they're able to do in terms of innovation. So the challenge in eClinical becomes, how do we take some of those lessons learned in the e-commerce industry and put them to work in the eClinical landscape?
So you're just touching on this a little, but what are some industry challenges that are creating the need to innovate interactive response technology?
Specific to IRT, it's a very risk-averse business. I'd say the overwhelming thought process is, if it's not broken, don't fix it. And the reason for that is, we're talking about a technology that randomizes patients and ultimately is the decision maker for what investigational drug gets put into another human being's body. So the price of getting it wrong is really incredible. If your randomization scheme's wrong, you might compromise the entire trial and every other piece of it. So the stakes really couldn't be higher from that perspective. So as a result, it can be very hard to inject unproven ideas into that landscape. However, we continue to be challenged more and more with a need not only for quicker, more efficient initial builds, but response to change. As we transition more as an eClinical industry to a follow the science mindset, what we're seeing is more and more complex protocol amendments. And the demands of those amendments bring all the complexity of building the system to begin with. So the challenge isn't just, can we do it right the first time? It's, can we do it right every time without jeopardizing the fact that in IRT, there is nothing you can accept less than 100% quality if you want to be considered a successful company.
So, what are some modern software development concepts that are having a positive impact on eClinical software development?
Well, I think there's a modernization in terms of eClinical, which often could be perceived as being a little bit behind the times, but we're seeing more and more products across the eClinical landscape do what I would describe as sharpening the saw. They're leaving behind these old, big, end-to-end monolithic architectures for a more modern approach via microservices. This harkens back to kind of your first question, Sydney, where we're very much mimicking a lot of the lessons learned in the e-commerce and tech industry at large. The microservice approach is what fundamentally enabled companies like Amazon and Netflix and Hulu and many others just like them to scale and scale at the rate that they did. And the reason for that is it allows a much greater response to change. In compartmentalizing our technologies and having them integrate with each other, it really future-proofs us for future integrations we could be asked to deliver. It also allows a lot more risk reduction when making changes to your platform. And having that set up in a multi-tenant capacity means we can roll those changes out to a broader portfolio of systems. So it eliminates a lot of the challenges we're used to in the eClinical landscape while also reducing risk, which is a good thing. In addition to eliminating regression impacts, which from a quality perspective, again, speaks to the need and the fundamentals of everything in terms of an IRT approach you want, which is 100% quality every time without compromise. I think one thing I know in eClinical when talking to all of our partners is that no one knows what integrations we're going to need in 3 to 5 years, but everyone knows we're going to need them. And what can we do from an architecture standpoint to future-proof our technology to ensure that when we understand the new needs we're going to have, that it's going to be easy and painless to implement? And it's kind of like solving a question that hasn't been asked yet. So taking the lessons from e-commerce, looking at a microservice architecture, enables us to build a very future-proof technology that guarantees one day when you come to me in 3 to 5 years with a list of integrations that today we've never heard of, we're going to be able to meet that need and meet it with ease across your whole portfolio.
So, specifically, how are these modern software development concepts impacting IRT platforms and capabilities?
Well, I believe that personally, IRT platforms are still being challenged to deliver the same uncompromising quality in shorter time frames. And again, the timeline pressure isn't just on the initial delivery of systems, but response to change. Protocol amendments continue to come more and more rapidly. And the complexity around those can be akin to building an entire system, again, into another system. Those are typically very high-risk endeavors. So the real demand isn't meeting the requirements of protocol version 1.0, but meeting the requirements of every protocol version between 1.0 and the database lock of the system. And that challenge brings with it an unpredictability. Your code base has to be customizable. It has to be configurable. You need to be able to move fast, but you also have to recognize that just because requirements of protocol 1.0 fit in your system, it doesn't mean requirements of protocol version 2.0 will. So how will you respond to that when those things come? It needs to be set up for rapid implementation. And a way to do that, again, is with a modern approach. Take the lessons that we've learned from e-commerce. We need to be able to rapidly roll out new functionality across a broad portfolio of studies, not simply the one study that demands it on that specific day. Another key point that always comes up is how can our technology be more patient and site-centric? So I think with these modern technology solutions, you can take a concept like headless architecture where your front end is not necessarily tied to the back end. And that enables you to take your standalone IRT platform or standalone eClinical solution and embed it into someone else's ecosystem. And that can be a really scary thing for an IRT vendor or eClinical vendor. Ultimately, what that means is a site might be using your system with all of its top shelf business logic, and they don't even know they're using it. And that's because we're able to embed our system via integration into other systems, meaning the site user has one place to go to complete everything they want. They have an end-to-end experience. And the only way to achieve this and achieve it at scale is via a modern software design, such as a microservice architecture.
So, what are the benefits of IRT users, sponsors, clinical, supply professionals, sites?
Great question. The benefits are many. From a sponsor standpoint, they benefit from our increased flexibility, our increased scalability. That can reduce costs, it can improve speed. And when you're reducing cost and increasing speed, that means we're getting medicines to market faster. You also get the peace of mind that not only will your initial builds move rapidly, but any protocol amendments that you have will also move every bit as rapidly. Additionally, sponsors very much understand the need for excellent project managers, but what often gets overlooked is that you also need great developers and testers. So attracting the best and brightest in that realm, you really need to be working on the modern solutions and the cutting edge solutions. And a proper architecture further ensures that the A team is on every piece of code in every system delivered, and that we're not doing more of a single tenant model where we fork and we have developers on every single project. From a clinical supply standpoint, those professionals can benefit from a lot of the same things as their sponsor counterparts. However, as users of a system, they really stand to benefit a more flexible front end. Again, I harken back to the concept of headless architecture, allowing you to sort of choose your own experience in your build. Gone are the days of an inflexible system where a supply professional asks for our version of a function. The real paradigm should be, what's your version of this function? And you should expect that from your eClinical vendors. Having the flexibility, the ability to choose your own front-end experience and not have that be a limitation of your provider's core product. And again, looking to sites. How can we make a day in the life of a site easier? One thing every site seems to tell anyone who asks is they don't want to learn a new technology and they don't want to remember another login. So supporting things like the basics of modern technology, SSO, being able to take our system and embed it in another system, perhaps, as we've worked with in partners, putting every single application they're using on one tablet. How can we make life in the site easier by putting everything they need to do in one place? And a great way to do that is via modern architecture.
Great. Thank you very much, Ryan, for speaking with us today.
Thanks for having me.
We look forward to learning more about YPrime's IRT solutions for the clinical development industry. Thank you all for joining us for this Xtalks Spotlight feature. We hope you enjoyed the show.